Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tina Swanek, and I'm the Career Explorer Northwest Educator Producer for KSPS PBS Television here in Spokane. Thanks for joining us again today. Career Explorer Live is an interactive Zoom event that connects young people with professionals so they can learn about careers and career paths. And today we're going to be learning about CNC operator machinist careers with the help of a special guest from Wagstaff Incorporated. Wagstaff provides innovative, comprehensive solutions to aluminum producers. The company develops, engineers, designs, and manufactures sophisticated molds, casting machines, automated systems, and ancillary equipment at their Spokane and Kentucky facilities, and has commissioned systems in 58 countries. Today, we're actually coming to you from Wagstaff's corporate headquarters and manufacturing facility in Spokane Valley, Washington. We have two schools with us today. We have East Valley High School and their instructor, Justin Sin, and we also have Spokane Valley Tech with us today with their instructor, John Trexler. Our special guest today is Nathan Balston, who is a CNC Operator Machinist 3 for Wagstaff. Hello, Nathan. Thank you for being here today. We're excited to learn about your career and also your daily work as a CNC Operator Machinist.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So, as Tina said, I'm a machinist 3 here at Wagstaff. My day-to-day duties are, they can vary from depending on which machine I'm running, but operating, setup, tool changes, fixes, repairs on just about any CNC machine here in the shop. Behind me right now, I have a 5-axis H&H machine. This machine has a Z travel of just under 5 feet. This machine comes straight from Australia, so it's very unique in this area. The career path that I chose as a machinist, the reason I chose this path is it allows you to be very creative. Your creativity exudes into your work. You can think of a million ways to do one singular thing in this field. The career that I chose as a CNC machinist, the education that I took is a 2-year program down at SEC. The first year is, focusing more on the fundamentals of machining, the math that you'll need to know, manual machining. And once you have all that down, you get to move on to your second year, which is CNC machining, learning your G&M code, your positioning, how a CNC machine works, the theory behind a CNC machine. And like I said, it was a 2-year program. I finished 2 years with a degree from Spokane Community College and I was in the field before I even graduated. I actually did my last quarter of college here in Spokane at a different shop.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathan. I really appreciate that overview. And you have some specific equipment behind you. Do you want to talk a little bit about just, what the machine is and maybe what kind of sort of manufacturing you're doing at the moment with this machine?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, behind me is an H&H Ultra 5-axis. As your typical machines will come with 3 standard axes, your X, Y, and Z axis. This machine comes with 2 axes of rotation. You have a C axis of rotation this way and an A axis of rotation this way. So that opens up miles and miles of possibilities when it comes to machining. Behind me right now running is this H&H 5-axis. It's running one of our aluminum molds right now. Currently, I have an order of about 10 or 12 parts in front of me. This is the 3rd part of this order, so it is just on auto mode. It is just cranking away, making chips. If you want to come with me, I can show you our control here. So this control isn't going to be your standard control. It is a touch screen and it has a lot more buttons and knobs than your standard controls will. Up here, I have 4 cameras to view this machine just because of how big it is. Sometimes you can't get a direct view of what you're actually machining. Down here, you have all of your lines of G&M code that are being read by the machine. You have all of your positioning. You have all the information from what tool you're using, what it's speeding at, and how fast it's spinning. And then, some other things. We have, a program timer. So far, it's been running for 3.5 hours. It has about another hour to run. I can look at all my G functions, all of my modal codes that are in here. Has auxiliary functions, different program levels, and that's just barely scratching the surface with a machine like this.
Wow, fantastic. So I think at this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn the floor over to those schools so they can ask some questions. I know I have a lot of questions, but we're here for the students so that they can get the information they need to make some good career decisions. We're going to start with a question from Spokane Valley Tech. If you wouldn't mind just giving us your first question, that'd be great.
Yeah, great to meet you. What was one of the biggest challenges you faced and how'd you overcome it?
So for me, one of the biggest challenges that I faced personally was learning all of the math and in what situations to use certain math. And it sounds very cliche, but the easiest way to overcome that is just with repetition. It seems so hard at first, but after you've been doing this for, 10 years is how long I've been doing this. And now it just comes second nature. So I guess my best advice for you is even if it seems hard, through repetition, you will get it down.
Okay, great. East Valley High School, what's your first question?
I was gonna ask, are you happy with this job? And if so, what do you think the best part about it is?
Absolutely, I'm happy with this job. And one of the best parts about it is the skills that it's given me that I'm also able to use in my personal life. I am a very avid motorcycle rider, and it's given me the skills to tinker on my own motorcycles and build parts for my own motorcycles. So it expands your creativity and gives you the skills to use your creativity in the real world.
Hey, next question, Spokane Valley Tech.
Charlie Moss here. What is a international or obscure location that your job has taken you to, and what are some of the challenges or benefits of that experience?
So I personally haven't gone international in this position. I know the company does do a lot of international positions. Mine is just more stationed here in Spokane. So unfortunately, that's all I got on that.
East Valley, next question.
Do you have a preferred metal to work on?
I do have a preferred metal to work on. The preferred metal that I like to work on is a metal called tantalum. It's a very exotic, rare metal, and it's very commonly used in electronics, microchip conductors, things like that. It's such a hard, exotic metal that, in a cut where you'd be taking anywhere from, who knows, 30 to 60 thou, you can only take 1/1000th of a cut at a time because of how hard and exotic it is. It's just a fun metal to work with.
We have one from Spokane Valley Tech from Edinburgh.
Okay.
What are some of the health risks for CNC operators, and what are some common injuries occurring in workplace?
That is a great question. And I'm going to give you a very broad answer. Because of how dangerous this machinery can be, safety is one of our top priorities. Injuries can range anywhere from a paper cut to looking at a blueprint to very serious bodily injuries. So that's why every time you step into a machine shop, you put on every single ounce of PPE you can, and you always think before you do anything, because we want everyone to be as safe as possible.
East Valley, next question.
What's the most exotic project you've ever worked on?
Probably the most exotic project that I've worked on had to be manufacturing exhaust manifolds for Caterpillar's 12-cylinder generators. I mean, these exhaust manifolds were over 7 feet long and took hours and hours and hours of machining to make them perfect. But it was one of those projects that was so hard, was actually fun, made me think a lot.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Justin Thompson, what advice would you give to someone in high school aspiring to be where and what you are?
So some advice that I would give someone in high school is really think about where you want to see yourself in 5 years and why you want to be in manufacturing as a machinist or a welder, anything in that area. As a machinist, for me, the reason why I chose it is because I didn't know it. It's one of those trades that even 10 years in, I still learn things every single day. One of those trades that is constantly evolving and constantly changing. There's always some new method or some new tool to use. So my advice to you in high school was always come into it with an open mind.
How does this auto mode work on these CNC machines?
So auto mode, it's going to read, your program, all the lines of G and M code, it's going to read it sequentially. So instead of having any program stops or, unprogrammed stops, whether I have to open the door and check the tool, things like that, it's just going to read all the G and M code sequentially until it hits the bottom of the code and goes back to the top. Once it goes back to the top, depending on what we're running, it'll either repeat that code or it'll stop for you to change parts and get the next one going.
Spokane Valley Tech, next question, please.
Cooper Scott, what is the best way to determine if your parts should be CNC'd or manufactured with a different method?
That's a really good question, and that's a question that a lot of machinists struggle with. I think personally the best way to determine is efficiency. So if you can efficiently do a project on a manual mill or lathe, but you could do it 10 times faster on a CNC machine, you have to look at cost versus efficiency. So if it costs less to do it on a manual machine, but it's more efficient to do it on a CNC machine, you might actually end up equaling out.
Next question.
If you had to do your career all over again, what would you do differently?
If I had to do it all over again, I would study a lot more materials and tools. So currently here at Wagstaff, we work primarily with aluminum, steels, stainless steels. The last shop that I worked for, we were working on gold, silver, tantalum, titanium, pretty much every exotic metal in the book. If I could go back, I would study those metals more to see how they machine differently compared to aluminum, stainless steel, and metals like that.
Spokane Valley Tech, next question.
Logan Wolf here. Where do you think the industry is headed growth or decay wise, and will robots take over?
That's a really good question. Automation is taking over little bit day by day. However, I believe there's always going to be a human element involved. The machine behind me requires me to use a crane to pick up, a part that's anywhere from 500 to 5 tons. So we could automate that, absolutely. But then you look at the cost that it costs to automate that. And as much as I, don't want to say robots will never take over, it's inching towards that. However, I don't think in the near future we're going to be seeing that level of automation. The level of automation that we're seeing in the field now is kind of like I was explaining with auto mode. You can set up multiple pallets and then have the machine run through the program 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times while a guy goes and does something else. So that's kind of the direction that the industry is heading, is one machinist to run multiple machines.
While the machine is running, do you sit there and watch it, or do you usually have other tasks that you're also doing while the machine is running?
That's a great question, because these parts have runtimes that are anywhere from 3 to 7 hours long. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't just sit in front of a machine and watch it run. I'll fall asleep. So there's plenty of things to do as a machinist, especially in this shop. There are, certain occasions where you're kind of tied to the machine. If it's a, not proven out setup, or, you're not sure what this tool is about to do, then yeah, you kind of want to stay close just to make sure nothing bad happens. As cool as it is to see sparks flying, it's never fun to see it while it's machining. But other tasks to do include running another machine, sweeping up your area, doing the handwork deburr part from the part before. So there's plenty of stuff to keep you busy in this field.
Spokane Valley Tech, next question.
We have another question from Braden Meeks.
What was one of the biggest mistakes that you faced doing a job?
One of the biggest mistakes that I faced during my job was not spending time learning tooling more. I figured, in my early stages of my career, you know, I'll pick it up as I go, which is true to a degree, but there's a lot of things that you can learn just from relief angles on end mills, just from, you know, different coatings on inserts, which, like I said, you know, kind of touching back, there's always new things to learn. There's always new tools coming out. There's always new methods coming out. But one of my biggest mistakes is not spending enough time focused on learning tools.
What is the toughest project you think you ran into?
The toughest project I think I ran into had to be, I'm going to touch back on those CAT exhaust manifolds. The reason why it was so tough yet so fun is because it was something I never did. So it challenged me. But there was a great amount of difficulty that we faced in getting that project done. We had to essentially take these manifolds and hold them floating in air and then machine them at 90 degrees of an angle. So there's a lot of difficulties we faced during that project. And like I said, it may have been tough, but it was very rewarding and very fun.
Spokane Valley Tech.
One of the questions from our students that came up as we prepared was, were there any assumptions or expectations that you had going into this community that turned out to be false or unrealistic?
Oh, absolutely. There was a lot of, you know, you hear a lot of things about any field that you're going into. You know, I think one of the expectations is everyone thinks that everyone in a shop is kind of gruff, you know, mean something, but every shop that I've gone into, a lot of the people here are very, very nice, and they're also willing to help you learn. And that is a huge, huge step for young machinists and everyone in manufacturing, really.
Is there a material that you don't like working with?
Yes, there are certain materials that I'm not excited about working with. I would say probably stainless steel is number one. It's just a very finicky material. You may think you know what it's going to do, but sometimes stainless steel just does what it wants to do.
Spokane Valley Tech, do you have another question?
Yeah, Charlie Moss here. What industry do you think has benefited the most to machining?
That's a big question. You know, there's machining and manufacturing and whatnot has benefited almost every single industry in the world. As far as, you know, to an aluminum Coke can, to the automotive industry, they would not be where they are without machining and manufacturing.
East Valley, do you have another question?
How often do you find yourself making mistakes on projects?
That is a really good question. I'm going to say probably every day. You're going to make a mistake while machining every single day as a machine. However, it's up to you to find that mistake before you start up a machine or turn the spindle on. You know, even after I've been doing this for 10 years, a decade, I find myself making, you know, little mistakes. And as a machinist, it's up to you to catch those mistakes before they become big mistakes.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Hi, I'm Sawyer. My question is, what percentage of your shift is doing what tasks?
You know, that's tough because it changes from day to day. You know, you may come in and a job's set up and just running, and what you're going to be doing is swapping out parts, deburring that part, and deburr jobs can take anywhere from 1, 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on the part. Mind you, you know, we're working with parts that are, you know, almost the size of cars, small cars. So in a traditional machine shop, I'd say 90% of your day is going to be, you know, swapping out parts or doing a setup, checking your tooling. And then the other 10%, you know, you might be deburring a part or, you know, things like that, little handwork things. But a huge percentage of your day is going to be spent at the machine ensuring that it's running.
East Valley, do you have another question?
How many companies have you worked for?
As a machinist, I've worked for 2 companies.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Justin Thompson, what was the most, or during your daily work, what is the most satisfying or frustrating part of your job?
What was the most frustrating part of my job? You know, there's certain jobs that, you know, and this is to be said for anything in life, you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. There was a job where I had made a mistake. I didn't catch it right as it happened, and it turned a small, easy job into a very, very long, hard job. Essentially, what had happened is I had a half-inch drill explode inside of a part because it didn't have coolant on. Well, now you're trying to figure out how to get that drill out of that part so you can save that part. What we ended up doing was using an EDM machine to essentially vibrate and explode that broken drill bit out of a part. So it turned a, 1, maybe 2 hour long job into a whole day job.
Now, the other part of Justin's question was most satisfying experiences in your job. Give you a chance to recover there.
Yeah. Most satisfying experiences. For me personally, the most satisfying experiences is when I do make a mistake and I actually, find a way to improve so I don't make that mistake again. So far in this career, I haven't made the same mistake twice. If there was wood near, I'd knock on it. But to me, that's the most satisfying thing, is making a mistake, learning from that mistake, and ultimately being able to fix said mistake.
Has any of your work ever had to come home with you?
I have never had to take work home with me, no.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Hi, Logan Wolf here. What is the largest item you've manufactured with CNC?
The largest item I've manufactured with a CNC, gosh. It would have to be one of our ingot molds. We make ingot molds that, range anywhere from 20 inches wide and 40 inches long up to 40 inches wide and 170 inches long. So the 170 inch long mold was so massive that even in our massive mills, we had to hang half of it out the back of the machine, run half of the part, turn it around, and run the other half.
What other projects have you worked on?
What other projects have I worked on? Well, I have worked on making sputtering targets for microchips, for the electronics industry. I've made copper backing plates to extrude into copper wire. Like I said, I've done Cat exhaust manifolds, lots of aluminum ingot molds around here. And then, there's kind of other odd jobs that come through as well, which is, a steel plate that needs a couple of holes in it. It can really range to almost anything.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Charlie Moss again. I was wondering, we've been told about the gray wave a lot and how the older generation is retiring and there's a need for machinists. I'm just wondering if that's a valid issue, or is that more of a way to recruit people?
That is certainly an issue, and we deal with that in this shop, today. You're very right. The older generation is retiring fast, and it's really hard to replace them as they retire. So what we do to combat that is you have to change philosophies as a machine shop. You have to increase efficiency. So you can find, multiple machines in here. At one point, we used to have a guy on every single machine, and he was at that machine day in, day out. Well, now, if we have parts running for 5, 6, 7 hours at a time, we don't need a guy sitting there while that machine runs. He can go get the next machine running, so on and so forth. So that's how we're starting to combat it.
East Valley.
What tips do you have for someone trying to go into the same career path?
The best tip that I have is keep an open mind, a very open mind, and never assume that you're going to ever know anything. There's always going to be someone that can teach you something. There's always going to be something that you can learn. And if you have that open mind, it keeps that ego down and it allows you to learn and become a better machine. I may be a machinist 3, which is the top of our scale here at Wagstaff, but I can learn from a machinist 1, a machinist 2, another machinist 3. Like I said, this industry is always changing, and all of the new guys coming into this industry, I like to talk with them and see, what did you learn in school versus what I learned in school, and how does that vary, and why are we going with that method, or why are we using these new tools, things like that.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Justin Thompson, what do you think are the best personal traits to have as a CNC operator, and how has your own work ethic helped you as a CNC operator?
So one of the best traits to have is, you said it, a work ethic. Wanting to stay busy. That is one of the best work ethics, or one of the best traits you can have really in any position. As a machinist though, kind of touching back, if your machine's running for 7 hours and you have nothing to do, find something to do. You know, every shop, if they see you doing that, they will, you know, jump for joy. I'd say a close second is being mindful. You know, every time you press a button on a CNC machine, it's up to you to know what that machine's about to do for a lot of reasons. Number one, your personal safety. You want to make sure that you're running and operating that machine completely safe. Secondly, you want to make a good part.
East Valley.
Being one of the top machinists at Wagstaff, do you find yourself oftentimes teaching a lot of the newer machinists and helping them fix any mistakes they've made?
Absolutely. You know, as a machinist, a tenured machinist, it's up to us to, you know, keep the industry alive. So I'm going to teach machinists the way that I know how to do things. They may teach me the way they do things. But absolutely, new machinists, they come in, we'd like to welcome them with open arms and give them a good solid foundation of, you know, their duties, what they'll be doing. If they don't know how to do something, I hope no one's ever afraid to come up to me and ask, because guess what? It's all about learning.
Spokane Valley Tech.
Logan Wolf again. What are the pay scales for a machinist 1, 2, and 3?
So I don't know exact numbers, but I can tell you that as a machinist here at Wagstaff and typically in Spokane, the whole pay scale, depending on experience, what you're running, what shop you're at, things like that, you're looking at a pay scale from probably 50 to 120,000, depending on, again, experience and what you're doing.
Okay, I think we have time for a couple more questions. East Valley.
What's your least favorite machine to work on?
My least favorite machine to work on is a machine that I don't know. As you know, a machine, there's you know, there's a sense of calm that you get, which is also a very dangerous sense of calm, because you always want to be aware of what you're doing. But the machine that you don't know is very frustrating.
Spokane Valley Tech, do you have another question?
Yes, we have one last question. In our discussions before the class, they were wondering what might have inspired you, and particularly who might have inspired you to follow this career path.
So who inspired me is actually my mom. She is also in the manufacturing field. She's an R&D, but I grew up, you know, in all sorts of shops. So being around this my entire life really inspired me to see what's possible in this trade and the skills that you can take away from it. And what inspired me personally is, like I said, I'm a very creative person. So having the skills and the whereabouts to be able to do certain things on my own time is just invaluable for me.
I have just one quick question for Nathan. I'm wondering about what do you see as your next step in your career?
So my next step in my career, I think, is something more in the digital space. I'd like to use what I've learned as a machinist to go more towards the SolidWorks and design sort of things. As a machinist, your brain is going to start looking at parts almost like a blueprint. And from my personal experience in teaching myself how to use SolidWorks, that was instrumental, being able to look at a solid part in one hand and kind of transfer it in my brain onto a computer as a model.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathan. Just curious if any of the instructors have any additional questions from East Valley or from Spokane Valley Tech?
From Spokane Valley Tech, I think my students covered it pretty well, but I really appreciate your time, Nathan, and the thorough answers. Thank you so much for sharing insights to these prospective machinists.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening.
Great. Well, I think we're at the end of today's event then. Once again, I'd like to very much thank Nathan for being with us today. Did a fantastic job of providing a really thorough and candid overview of the industry, your career path, some of your daily duties. Very helpful. I'd also like to thank our two schools that are here today. Like I mentioned, we had East Valley High School and also Spokane Valley Tech. So I'm bringing everybody up on the screen here. Thanks so much for your incredibly well thought out questions. And it was almost like a lightning round. We had so many questions and really covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. So thank you for your preparation that you put into getting ready for today's event by preparing those questions. I hope that the students all today found this session to be very interesting and especially very informative. We know you're all trying to make career decisions and determine what your career path is going to be. So we especially hope that what you learned today will help you in that decision-making process to decide if a career as a CNC operator machinist is right for you. Thank you so much for being here today and making this a really fantastic event. We appreciate your attendance today.